Hi there, my name is Brendan Caverhill and I'm a science teacher in Ontario. And we are about to start our first live Google Hangout here at the STAO conference. We're heading down the hall from the exhibit hall to International B, where Bonnie Schmidt is going to be talking. And she'll be with us for about an hour, and we'll see what she has to teach us.
Oh, yeah. What's yours called?
So there's in French.
We do have a lot of French, but it's not.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
It's not all.
We are delighted to have Bonnie Schmidt, Dr. Bonnie Schmidt, with us this morning, who's going to tell us all about Let's Talk Science. There's many things that she's done. She's the founder of this organization. She's doing amazing work in schools. One of two national organizations that the other one is Scientists in School, and Cindy Adams will be presenting later. Two remarkable women who've done a lot of great things for science education here in the province. And Bonnie is going to be telling us specifically about her program, which she founded and which, as I say, has grown like topsy. For her efforts in collaboration, Bonnie's done many things, but for her efforts in education, Bonnie has been recognized with a Top 40 Under 40 Award, Queen's Golden Jubilee Award, Ontario's Leading Women Building Communities Award, YMCA Women's Distinction Award, and UWO's Young Alumni Award. I'm not sure if there's anything, I get tired reading the list. We're going to ask Bonnie to present in a moment, and the other thing I want to add is she just received or will be receiving officially an Order of Canada for all the work that she's done, which I think is amazing. So welcome, Bonnie. Wherever you are.
I appreciate the introduction. I will point out that all those young awards were a long time ago. I'm going to talk a little bit about Let's Talk Science, but actually I wanted more to share some of the research that we've done at Let's Talk Science for the last couple of years. I want to start by just saying I am so enormously happy to be here as part of the celebrations of STAO. A long time ago, I was on the executive of STAO. I think it's a fantastic organization and continues to be as needed now as it has been for the last 120 years. So I'm really thrilled. My organization, Let's Talk Science, it has an exhibit booth a little bit on some of the work that we do, but really I thought it's more important rather than just preaching to the converted. You're all thinking that STEM education is probably kind of important. I wanted to give you a little bit of insight and information about what we're hearing from kids, what we're hearing from parents, largely. So to set the scene, though, I wanted to reflect a little bit on what it was like back when STAO set up shop, right? And I think you'll see that the more things change, the more they stay the same. So 1890. Launch of STAO. This is actually a time in Canada's history when we were forging a change in our economy, forging towards a national economy. So there's quite a lot on the internet about the train system going through, about the Hudson Bay Company setting up stores right across the country. So we were going through a transition of our economy at that point in time, which was opening up the country, goods and services beginning to move, and a lot of furor. There was a rise in urbanization at that point in time. This is a picture of a school from Midland. So people were moving towards the big city. We were starting to see, because of the lack of public transportation, cities and towns were becoming crowded as the economy was changing and people had a lack of public transportation, so they were living closer to the factories. Dismal working conditions, lots of challenges that were going on as we tried to balance and rebalance towards a barrier-based, local, town-based economy into this national-based economy. Turns out it also was the first time that science education was systematically put into the education curriculum. So teachers were dealing with multi-age classrooms. They were dealing with a lack of resources. This is from Midland. And at the same time, people were telling us that they needed to do more science and actually do it systematically. Turns out that science education was really brought into the forefront at that point through a thing called nature science. This book, the cover that I found on Amazon, really starts to document the origins of science education in Canada's education system. And I just couldn't resist sharing what they wrote on this. So here's what was written about why this was so important again, 125 years ago. So nature science, this object-based approach to learning about the natural world, marked the first systematic attempt to introduce science into elementary education. And it came at a time when institutions such as zoos, botanical gardens, natural history museums, and national parks were promoting the idea that direct knowledge of nature would benefit an increasingly urban and industrial nation. So flash forward, and what your challenges now, we're actually looking at another marked change in our economy. It's not just now you're preparing kids to be able to deal with movement of goods and services through the rail system, but we've got to get them ready for a global economy. We've got to get them ready for civic and ready for work demands in which science, tech, engineering, math, innovation are transformative forces. So I want to try to give you a little bit more information of what we've been finding out so that as you're going through your incredibly important job within the classroom, within the schools, within the boards, to really help to ride this wave of new discussions happening around a new economy. What is it going to take for you as a key person in these kids' lives to get them ready for something that is as new now as was new for teachers since DAO started, which I actually think is kind of interesting. That we've done over the last few years, largely working with the federal government, taking a look at where the jobs are going to be over the next 15, 20 years. That increasingly science and tech are going to be required, or the skills developed through science and tech, for about 70% of jobs. Does not matter the pathways these kids are going through now. University, college, trades, direct to work, think manufacturing. The world of work has changed enormously in the course of one generation. So while most of my talk is wearing a hat of Let's Talk Science, part of it is the hat of a mom, like a 16-year-old who has now just submitted her early application to university. So thinking about what the world is for her and what she's facing compared to many years ago when I was facing, it has just changed enormously. And I'm not sure that we're doing a good enough job arming with you with the information and the resources that you need to help them navigate these complexities. We also have to be preparing kids for a world of citizenship that is very different. So the grand global challenges that we talk about, whether it's climate change, whether it's healthcare issues, agriculture, sustainable energy, potable water, how do we ensure that people around the world have easy access to clean water as a basic human right, underpinned by science and technology? So despite the changes in the job opportunities that are being transformed and the citizenship issues that are referred to our young people, we're not seeing a lot of movement on their participation rates. So a couple of years ago, we started working with ministers of education from coast to coast and began to identify courses that could be seen as comparable. And this is with a national average. Instead of, I will back up and say it's very difficult to find really good, clean information about what kids are choosing to do in the optional courses. So we went to 5 of the bigger provinces, said we are trying to understand optional enrollment in those courses that would be accepted in other provinces. There's quite a lot of optional courses out there that are not actually transferable between provinces and are not taken as a prerequisite. So on average, we have fewer than half of our kids actually graduating with the grade 12 credits that are needed for many of the university-bound programs. And you'll note that on average, 19% are taking physics. I will say that physics used to be a prerequisite for engineering, and I was surprised not that long ago. I was in Vancouver, and I found out when I brought the stat forward, a number of them said it's no longer required anymore. So we've dropped the requirement for physics because so few people were actually applying with it. So in addition to a rapid state of change for you as the educator, you've got an environment in which the technology diffusion is unbelievable. So we are seeing adoption rates, and this one is just the standard graph that I'm sure you've all seen on how many years it's taken to have main market penetration of new technology, from the length of time it took cars to be adopted to the far left is the adoption rate of cell phones. So the complexity of the vehicle of delivery that you as educators are being faced with is really quite unbelievable. We now have near universal access to content. So getting the movement away from what you know to what you do with what you know is actually a really big shift. It's a big shift in how we support educators. It's a big shift in how you support the learners in your classroom. So for us, again, I'm not going to get on the soapbox. I think that we're all in the same camp at this table about the importance of STEM. From Let's Talk Science's perspective, it's not about the content. It's about the process skills that you're helping them uncover and to build. It's about inquiry. It's about helping young people understand ways to ask questions that are powerful and meaningful, and provide them with the skill sets, the habits of mind, the attributes that will empower them to find the answers and to seek the answers. That's the essence of innovation. I was at the Ontario Economic Summit not that long, just a few weeks ago, and the conversation around that table with business leaders and government leaders is still focused on that post-secondary audience. They're still talking about driving innovation through venture capital, through driving innovation on job creation. And I keep saying we've got to actually be working at the preschool to 12 level, because those habits of mind, the ability to ask and think innovatively, you have that. You have that. That is part of your responsibility as educators. And I'm trying really hard to get the voice at the table in some of those things. So one of the things that we are trying to do, and I'm just going to do a real sidestep here for a pitch, because we have a project that we're working on with Samsung that can fit squarely into your camp as classroom educators to bring an inquiry-based approach to learning and actually vie for some technology. And I've got some flyers up front. There's going to be some more flyers at the Let's Talk Science exhibit. But the letters of intent are due in 2 weeks. So my sidestep is just to say, if you're doing an inquiry-based, student-centered approach to learning within the classroom, then this challenge can give you an opportunity to actually have a focus or a classroom-based project using STEM to solve a challenge that you and your kids identify, and then you could actually be part of receiving up to $500,000 worth of technology from Samsung for use in the school in the classroom. So check it out, and I've got some flyers up here for those of you who don't have it yet. So for us, it's about skills. How do we actually use STEM to build skills? And these are just a few of the skills that when I reflected back on doing a graduate work, it wasn't until I was in graduate school that I started to truly understand what inquiry meant and the power of exploring science and technology in a way that would help build these kinds of attributes. These are the attributes they talk about at the Ontario Economic Summit and the other summits across. They talk about risk tolerance, they talk about resiliency, they talk about persistence. They talk about how do we create learners that are lifelong learners that have the skills and attributes to solve problems, to have big ideas, and to ask really good questions. So again, basis of STEM education. So I want to step back a bit and talk a little bit about what we're seeing. So we're seeing the importance of STEM rising. We're seeing it at federal level. We're seeing it right across the country in the provinces. We're seeing the science curriculum changing from coast to coast. We've even seen 2 federal studies that have been done by the Council of Canadian Academies in the last 2 years focusing on this. And if you haven't seen them, I do urge you to check them out, because I was surprised that in such a short period of time, that agency, which typically strikes experts panel to look at issues of importance within the science and research community, so fracking and energy sustainability and mining and hard science, they look at 2 studies on STEM culture and STEM skills done in the last 2 years. The infographic on the right shows where we are starting to see some results as a country. So the top study with the little Einstein-y looking kid on the cover, that was the culture one. The one underneath was looking at STEM skills. So what are we seeing? We're seeing that when it relates to attitudes, Canadians rank in the top 1 or 2 globally when it comes to positive attitudes towards science and technology, when it comes to things like going to a science center, spending some spare time exploring STEM. So pretty positive attributes there. When we start asking questions around performance on international tests, we're slipping a bit. We're still in the top, so we're still ranked 10th. Our kids are doing okay on PISA. We see a little bit of press headlines sometimes and talking about absolute declines. We are seeing some declines, and we are seeing some regional differences for sure. Globally, we're starting to see a slip up in our rankings. Not setting a fire yet, but something that we need to be watching. So attitudes in the top tier, performance dropping a little bit. But when we get to the choice and we get to the behaviors, Canada as a whole is definitely on the decline. So we're ranked 19th when it comes to the first degrees in STEM areas. We're ranked 22nd and dropping when it comes to workforce, so the proportion of our workforce that have the STEM attributes. So really high when it comes to attitudes, starting to drop as we get into the choice and the behaviors. So what's happening? We're living in a culture, again, this is the picture in my living room often with a kid in grade 12. Technology is pervasive. Our teens are consumers of technology. They're very interested in what's in the backpack, what's in the technology. Very positive attitudes, not making decisions that we as a country think are important. So this is a slide that talks about the known barriers, and I pulled this together from research that's been done globally over the last probably 8 to 10 years, starting with OECD numbers to looking at the Rose study out of Norway. There's been a compilation of barriers, so it's not that we don't understand what's happening. We have a pretty good idea. We do see that teenagers in particular are seeing that there's a lack of relevance, a lack of interest that they have. So relevance is important. We're actually doing some work right now looking at teen attitudes and perceptions of relevance. Lack of careers and unclear pathways. People need science and math or college is really an unknown to a lot of them right now. And yet there's actually more programs at the college level that have those kinds of requirements than often at the university level. So they're not sure where it's going to lead, maybe not relevant. Lack of role models, like try as we might, and Let's Talk Science has thousands of role models across the country. The ability to scale and get to all kids is still a barrier. So role models is still a bit of a challenge. Teachers, we absolutely know that you're lacking support, training, and resources, classroom resources. Doing science means having stuff to work, right? So we know that. And I added parents to the list, and I'm going to talk for a little bit about why parents are a barrier as well. So you have a baseline for us. Let's Talk Science is about creating opportunities for kids to fulfill their potential and to develop young people who can thrive in a new world of work and become citizens. Our goal is to help kids stay engaged in their STEM areas to the end of high school. After that, opportunities, doors are open for them. They can choose university, college, direct to work, non-STEM work. Our sweet spot is really that preschool to grade 12. And our core competencies are listed below. So about connecting the STEM and the education communities, providing resources and curriculum-appropriate programs for teachers and for kids. And then a big part lately around the advocating for the important work that you are doing, evaluating the impact of our programs and others, and benchmarking. So if as a country we're wanting to change our economy, how do we actually know when we get there? How are we measuring? We have a suite of programs. You can find out more at the exhibit, but in a nutshell, we have from preschool to grade 12 programs and resources for both educators and for teachers. And for the kids directly. About 80% of our work is done in schools, but 20% is done out of schools, and our programs are free. So the only thing that we even have nominal costs for is really if we do summer institutes and some of the workshops in which we want to make sure people show up. But for the most part, it's very nominal or absolutely free. And each of the programs has been designed to deal with the barriers that were just talked about on the last slide. Our key outcomes, we're very outcomes focused. We're looking at how do we build kids' skills and attitudes, how do we build proficiency and confidence in teachers who maybe don't have a STEM background but are required to teach it. How do we increase the skills for post-secondary volunteers? Because we have about 3,500 of them across the country or more. We've got well over 1,000 volunteers in Ontario through 21 universities and colleges right across the province that will come to the classroom for free and do programming with you and work with your kids directly. And we focus a lot more on the public awareness. And that's what I'm going to shift into now for the rest of the talk. So if you go to our website and go into the research and evaluation section, there's more that are there. You can cherry pick some of the research that might help you with informing your planning or working within your school administration. And some of the work that I want to talk about today is our benchmarks. So we've taken over the last 4 years in partnership with the Amgen Canada, we've really taken a step up above the environment to say, what do we need to be measuring as a country to figure out whether we're on track? And again, my scope is national as opposed to provincial. And we've been doing a lot of work on that whole demand supply chain. If the jobs are there, are we actually getting kids ready to be beneficiaries of it? And I do want to underscore that Let's Talk Science is not just about job preparation at all. It is about science literacy. But sometimes when you're out dealing with folks in industry or dealing with folks in government, if you understand what's motivating them and driving them, and you can talk about the important work that we're doing in a way that will satisfy them, they start to unlock other opportunities and get you connected. So much of the spotlight work that we've done with Amgen is really looking at that demand supply. And then we started to take a deeper look into if we're not actually looking like we might be on track to supply talent that will be needed, why not? What's happening? So 2 years ago, we did a study with kids. We did a poll nationally of teenagers, and we asked them quite a number of questions about their perceptions for science and technology, engineering, and math. And it does look like there has been an increased appetite, an increased interest, positive awareness and understanding of the importance of science and technology. 74% think it's important for adult life. 78% think it offers career opportunities, but largely for somebody else. They have great values. This one, actually, I was really very, very happy to see. We took a survey last year that was done with the UK with young high school students, and we replicated it right across the country. And what we were finding is that our kids are thinking big. They've got a great desire to make a contribution to society, 84%. They want to be helping people, 79%. They want to make decisions. And what was really interesting is when we compared this data to the UK data, the kids in the UK were reporting that about 40% of them wanted jobs that allowed them to make decisions. So we're dealing with a position of strength with our teenagers. They want to do something that's valuable. 70% of them want to be solving problems. So what we have to think about doing is understanding the motivation that the kids are having and try to draw the connection with the STEM-based work. Because right now, there's a big disconnect that's happening. Do you remember going back to the slide about what are the chief barriers, perceived relevance? So how are we meeting them in an environment in which we know what their values are, we know that they want to be doing bigger things? How do we actually be presenting our programming? How do we do the classroom work? How do we engage them in student-centered learning in a way that will actually address some of the issues that they want to have? We're also saying that they have these great values, but they're not necessarily making the connection with the STEM programming. So only 22% are interested in pursuing science at the post-secondary level, and 12% looking at science-related jobs. 60% of them think that a university degree is required for science. So how many of you are talking about the college programs in the classroom? And I'll say that I'm going to kind of go through a bunch of data and then I want to open it up so we can have a conversation about this and explore the issues a bit more. But are you finding, as you're teaching the sciences, that more is coming up around the alternate pathways? Yeah, thanks for head nodding. Are you finding that you have the resources that you need in order to have those kinds of conversations with the kids on the multiple pathways? A few heads shaking. Yeah. Okay. maybe we can capture that and come back and talk a little bit about what kinds of resources you might need and how an organization like ours might be able to fill some of that need for you. So we are finding that interest is driving what they're choosing. Seems intuitive. They're not finding it interesting, they're not wanting to go into it, but to actually start to document it. We did a pilot project out in Newfoundland about a year and a half ago in which we took a look at how teachers were rating what they thought was interesting and relevant, and then connecting it with the kids' perceptions of what was interesting and relevant. And we were definitely seeing a disconnect in how the definitions were brought to bear. The teachers who then decided that they would find out if the kids were also agreeing with their interest and relevance, their scores changed over the course of the year with something as simple as the teachers taking a look at the questionnaires that we were gathering from the kids and beginning to say, I thought this was interesting, my kids don't see this as relevant. And in fact, it was as simple as talking about vaccinations at a point in time when kids were perceiving themselves not ill. And so they really weren't even all that interested in thinking about how do you have a conversation or study the importance of vaccines when the kids themselves aren't feeling ill. That can be like the micro-targeting of time that a teenage brain is thinking that something is relevant or interesting. And I found that incredibly interesting myself. So you need to think a little bit about that. We also found that when it came to looking at careers, that there's still quite a persistent gender stereotype. These are infographics of a normalized audience, so 46% were interested in technology degrees, but it really skewed. There's about 15% difference either way of boys versus girls interested in technology. 40% science, skewing the other way. Girls are showing a stronger interest in areas of laboratory science than we've seen before, and skewing more than boys when it comes to looking at that kind of research jobs. Again, this was a survey of high school students. Interested in skilled trades, really skewed boys towards the girls, for sure. And in fact, some of the work we did about 2 years ago was showing that in the STEM-heavy skilled trades, we're lucky to hit 6% of girls, young women, in those areas. So in the skilled trades, girls are skewing towards the traditional trades, the early childhood, the hairdresser, cosmetician, those kinds of areas. And in the higher paying STEM-heavy trades, I think electrical was the top ranking one for women, and it was 6% apprenticeships for women. Again, understanding when you start taking it from my daughter and just know that technology is not required as a credit anywhere in this country for graduation. So you start to see even in grade 9 tech class, my daughter was the only girl in the class at that point in time. 28% engineering, again, still skewed, boys to girls, 22% even across both genders. 39% expressed interest in becoming entrepreneurs, and that was very narrow variance. So boys and girls are both starting to express interest. We've actually got a project going on in Ontario in which we're trying to connection of STEM skills and the STEM programming and future opportunities as entrepreneurs, and it's proving to be a really interesting platform. So for those of you who are trying to think of other contexts to bring to light how you get these skills going, the idea of entrepreneurship, creating a business, learning about those kinds of things is having increasingly high appeal to our teenagers. It's getting a lot of airtime as well as we hear about showcasing young entrepreneurs. Interestingly, at some of the economic places I've been at lately, the talk globally about the rise in the entrepreneurship culture is very strong. So it is shifting in Canada, and it's also shifting right around the world. We're going to start to see more of that. I know there's been a number of pilot projects, maybe some of you have been involved with, in looking at innovative thinking skills or looking at entrepreneurial development and entrepreneurship skills in the high school environment. This one I thought was really interesting too, and I'm going to compare this in a few moments to what the parents are thinking. So kids' perception of what happens in work, that would be defined as STEM-based work. So we asked them if they would actually rate, do you think this is happening in a science job, an engineering job, a technology job, or none of these? And some of the responses are quite interesting. I wonder if I actually highlighted this one or not. just see before I go to the next one.
We have to choose one.
Hmm?
We have to choose one.
Yeah. They had to go through each one of them and rate, so it was an open question. Whether they thought that these particular designing things, developing new ideas, working with machinery, helping to save lives, working in an interesting environment, solving problems, or communicating with others. And the two of them that really jumped out at me was the perception of whether you would actually have an interesting work environment if you went into STEM. So science is up a little bit, but all of those other areas kids are just not thinking is going to provide interesting work. And the perception that we don't talk to anybody is still prevalent. You know, more than a quarter, a third of kids, 40% in some cases, think that these jobs are still very isolationist. And if you look above, the help to save unequated safety and lives with engineering. And yet that's the symbol of the ring. The ring for engineering safety is paramount, and lives and the protection of human life is the #1 driver of engineering. So the fact that the disconnect between what our kids are thinking that they might be getting ready for and what's actually happening in the work environment, I think we have a lot of opportunity to actually tell the message, tell the story a bit differently. We also asked them about their optional courses. So as we all know, in Ontario, there's only 2 required science credits, and then the third is an optional. We asked the kids in your last year of study, what do you really want to study? And we do continue to see the gender difference. It's kind of frustrating though, because for years we've been talking about this whole issue. What is it going to take to start to change some of the needle? Girls are still drawn towards this, which is great, it's good. Boys are still drawn towards ICT and information technology. Girls towards the arts and the English as well. So how do we create programming that might be more multidisciplinary, so we're actually having skills in these areas being covered in both genders? How do we deal with ICT? It becomes a continued issue, but how do we engage all? I actually find interesting, I didn't share here, but the use of computers and the ability or the understanding of the number of jobs that actually use computers is not as high as I would have thought with kids in our generation. So we do have to think a little bit about, again, moving the options. So we're not about making science mandatory graduation end of high school. We're going to have conversations about what will it take to have kids want to be taking them. How do we actually change practice, change resources, change support and training so that we get these members that none of them are over students. So we've really worked at trying to understand what the different audiences, the different stakeholders. I think it's very unfair to think that teachers should carry the burden of the work in helping young people get ready for a new economy. And so this icon really breaks out all of the different stakeholder groups. And Let's Talk Science has been working on how do we address issues and opportunities with all of them. Rather than actually focus on the one on the bottom left, which is your role and opportunity, I wanted to spend the next few minutes actually talking about parents. And then I'd like to have a conversation, because we're going to have lots of time to actually have a discussion with some of the data. So it turns out that parents actually are the #1 influencer. We've done a couple of polls with parents, we've done a couple of polls with kids, and despite the importance of teachers and despite the importance of role models, parents by far are the #1 key influencer when it comes to the optional credits, the high school participation, and the post-secondary pathway. Not so much the career, but the post-secondary pathway. And we're talking about 75% to 24% parents compared to teachers. So it's really important that we do figure out what it is that parents are thinking and how can we actually help to support parents. So the study that we released on Tuesday was, again, a national poll. We went to parents of teenagers, so it wasn't the same parents of the teenagers that we polled last year, but it was still a representative sample. We looked for geography, we looked for gender balance, we looked for their own background backgrounds, whether they themselves had had a university degree, a college degree, or a skilled trades degree. So we really did try to balance and have a good representative sample base. What do you think are the kinds of skills that you are going to want to see your kids actually develop for the future? And I've never seen unanimity in a poll that we've done before. But if you take a look at the top ones, we're agreeing that problem-solving skills, well, that one was 100%, but other skills and attributes, being on time and respectful of others, working collaboratively, thinking critically, using electronic devices to find information, and then later using electronic devices for doing presentations and computing are critically important, and parents are seeing as important skills for the future. The ability to communicate in writing. And all of this is available on our website as well. So I think we may actually have a few different copies of the report at our exhibit too. But quite interesting. Ability to speak in front of a group, synthesize data and information, leadership, understanding science, and then suddenly things start to drop a little bit. So playing a sport, being physically fit is a little bit lower, speaking a foreign language, and the ability to write software code. About half the parents who are seeing as something that would be a skill that's important for the future. Does any of this apply to any of you? Head noddings? Yeah. Were there things that you thought would have been up there? I see Don's hand go up there. Yeah. Interesting. It wasn't so much topics, but really I was thinking about what are the skills and habits of mind and the attributes that we're developing for kids, right? So math and science is still pretty high, and in fact, parents were saying that if they could be the Minister of Education for the day, they would actually put more resources into doing experiential education. Which is kind of interesting. Parents do understand that STEM can actually be very important for kids' building. So 69% felt that STEM is going to lead to critical thinkers. 68% felt that STEM education prepares kids to be global problem solvers. And 76% that would prepare them to become innovators and entrepreneurs. And they would spend more money on STEM. You've got champions in your backyard. The number one choice if they had money to spend on school was around improving STEM education. And then it drops a bit more. Are we mobilizing our parents in a way? Maybe around STEM? You've got champions in your backyard. 9 out of 10 felt that STEM was really important for success in any career. But 60% of them don't have a clue how we're doing. And 31% of them think it's actually mandatory to be in grade 12. 59% think math is mandatory to be in grade 12. There's actually no province or territory that requires grade 12 science for graduation or grade 12 math. Actually, that's not true. Newfoundland requires grade 12 math. So I think we have an environment in which parents are really supportive. They're seeing the incredible value of what you're doing for their kids' future. And I think there's assumptions that are being made that the school's taking care of what needs to happen. We need to be thinking a little bit differently about how we're getting information back to parents, about what's needed, how STEM is actually helping their kids. Because the overwhelming answer on how they think they're actually doing in Canada, and this was the same from province to province, is they don't know. So about 5% were saying we're doing a good job, but overwhelmingly they just said they don't know. This was the back of my daughter's report card. Again, that the heightened piece of it's too small for you to actually read, but it's the credits, which I know you're all well aware of. I think from the parental hat, my surprise was the 2 science credits are required for graduation, and then of the 3rd optional, sciences or French as a second language is actually equivalent in the science and technology 3rd option. Did you guys know that? So talking about what is actually in the system for kids to get involved with is misunderstood too. So this is a slide that's a little bit hard to read. It was a juxtaposition of that table that I showed you before on what kids are thinking and what parents are thinking. And it's a bit too hard to read, unfortunately, so I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but I will say that the parent feedback on where they think those attributes of the jobs would be are in blue. The kids' responses are in green, and the grayed out boxes are where there was a variance of more than 10% between the parent perception and the kids' perception. And then we called out a few of them of where are they going to be needing design skills, where are they going to be needing computer skills, and the difference between the understanding that parents have and where the STEM is and where the kids' understanding is actually quite large on a lot of them. So it gets to the point that parents do have a pretty good understanding of the kinds of skills and attributes that we're trying to develop with our kids doing STEM education, and they have a very good appreciation. But they're not, and they think they can have a high influence on it. So 88% of are they having a significant influence, or they could have a significant influence on the kinds of things that they're choosing. But most of them are actually not having the conversation. So only about a quarter of our parents are saying that they're talking to their kids as they're faced with making some of those optional enrollment decisions. So end of grade 10, grade 9, grade 10, how many of your grade 12 sciences in yeah. So what we're seeing is not only do we see a really big drop-off of kids participating, and some schools might be different, but if you aggregate the numbers on a whole nationally, throughout the provinces, we're definitely seeing not the kind of increase that we would think that we would like to see if these are appealing. But it is matching the number of kids who are saying that they're listening to their parents and the parents are talking to them about it. So I find it kind of interesting that a quarter of parents are having these conversations with our kids, although they think it's really important for the kids to be doing it. So what can we be doing to be providing information back, and at what point in time should we? Maybe we can talk about that in just a couple of minutes as well. Because we need advice as well. We need to figure out how do we start driving these discussions between parents and kids if they are the key influencer of these decisions. So I'm going to come back to wrapping up on talking about the barriers to the youth engagement. So just rethinking a little bit about the perceived lack of actually making the connection between what we're doing in the classroom with them and how they're seeing the perception of what will be ready for them when they come out. Pathways, career pathways. Apparently, parents have a better idea of the kinds of skills and attributes and the kind of environment that some of these jobs might find their kids in, but they're not having the conversation. Role models. We need to figure out what you need, how we help support you with providing role models. How many educators have worked outside of the classroom? A few of you, actually quite a good number of you, right? And how many of you have been in the classroom or in school administration for your whole career? Really very interesting because typically when I ask that question, leaders who have had easy access to industry or easy access either because of their own background or because they've actually got ties to industry in their local community. So for whatever reason, although the scaling is starting to happen, we're still struggling to get the kinds of role models into schools. I think part of it too is helping within the college pathways. How do we identify people who are STEM workers who have come through college pathways, and then how do we help support them in being role models back to schools? I have seen that within the college environment, the culture is probably 10 years behind with university outreach cultures as well. So discussing the importance of reaching out from a college perspective and the resourcing needed for people who have the backgrounds or the traits backgrounds to be good communicators, to be the kinds of supports that you would need in the classroom is still a little bit behind. So we're trying to think through some of that at Top Science. And again, we need to make sure that you've got the barriers and addressed for your classroom. And then the parents. So I'm hoping that some of the research that I brought to bear with you will help you. Because more than ever, we need you to really thrive. We need you to help get kids ready for a new economy, help get kids ready for a global environment in which the skills that they've actually been developing through your science and tech and engineering math programming will work. We need to figure out how to harness the parental influence. And I also encourage you to really think about the known barriers to youth engagement as you're dealing with your planning. Call on Let's Talk Science. I can walk through some of the details of our program for those who want to actually walk through some of those details. And talk about and think about the youth attitude. So engage your kids. Have a student-centered approach, because when the kids are thinking that they're doing things that are interesting and relevant, you will still cover the curriculum. And as they have more ownership over it, you can actually help to see them thrive with some of their skill development. And with that, I'm going to wrap and ask for questions and have a conversation with you. I'd really just like being a talking head up here, spewing data. We've got other workshops that are going on, and we have an exhibit. But with that, I'm going to wrap the data, and I want to ask you for any questions on this and have a conversation about what we can do to support you better and making sure that you can continue to be critical influencers on our high school kids and our elementary school kids' lives. So thank you for all that you do today. So questions, reflections about the data. Other questions? We've actually got more data than this too that we can talk about.
I mean, maybe you could comment on the position of the curricula, which of course all these people have to deliver. Whether the ministries are in charge in terms of STEM education and so forth. But that's shown up in the data.
That's actually really interesting. I have to say I've never been so bullish before on the recognition of the importance of STEM education at the K-12 level. We've been seeing consultations right across the country. Part of the problem was with the economic environment. In some provinces, the curriculum renewal paused, and that's a cause for concern. On the one hand, ministers, including our current minister, is a very, very strong advocate for STEM education, and the deputy is a very strong advocate for skills development in particular. I think even at the Council of Ministers of Education table, the recognition that the skills that are inherent in STEM education is something that's being talked about. Alberta, lots of provincial tours done. I think we've done an unfortunate job in the media sometimes. You saw what happened in Alberta, which ultimately caused a pause to some of the curriculum development. So Alberta was on the path to review, refine, and redo its STEM curriculum to be far more inquiry-based. Media called it discovery learning, and I don't know if you watched the headlines, but the headlines on our teachers aren't doing their job and they're letting kids discover things in the classroom. So it caused a real problem. So I'm seeing an intent and a strong desire to move in a direction that I know you would like to see, experiential, inquiry-based, have the tools and resources. I see an intent there I've never seen before, and I see a resource constraint that is causing some real challenges, and where do we go next? So from an educator perspective, I think it's challenging. From an NGO supporting agency perspective, I think it's an opportunity for teachers to be working us harder. I think from a perspective of figuring out what you need to operationalize and achieve the vision of the policy documents, because I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be covered, but for the most part, it's pretty good right across the country. And the challenge is the resourcing, right? So how do we ensure that you can actually operationalize the intent of the curriculum? And I think there's a lot of space for work to happen there. So I would like to do more. With our programs, we've developed a suite that provide opportunities for you to engage elementary age students and secondary. So if I run through them really quickly, we've got our outreach program that provides you with access to well over 1,000 post-secondary volunteers across Ontario to bring in for free. They're right across Ontario. We do support both languages, English and French, and these are largely undergrad and graduate students. 60% of our volunteers are doing their master's education program in a STEM discipline. They work with you to help bring what you need to be brought to life. So it's not just here, pick the program that you want, and we come in and do it. We actually do have a partnership with the teacher. We have the Let's Talk Science Challenge, which is for grades 6, 7, 8 students who are wanting and needing a little bit of enrichment. That program has grown enormously quickly. We've actually got 12 sites across Ontario. We opened registration, I think it was on Tuesday, and by the end of Tuesday, we had about 300 and some odd teams registered and one site in Ontario filled. Like, that's how fast these things are happening.
It's actually for the Let's Talk Challenge, because it's 6 to 8. I teach 5 and 6, but I was wondering why, like, maybe even grade 5s weren't included in something like that.
Okay. So the program for the challenge is above grade level, and a lot of the stuff that we actually work with the kids on is at the grade 9 level, the grade 10 level. So it's up to the teacher. We've actually seen a number of grade 5s, but as soon as you start having the fuzzy end at the bottom, but we're shocked at how quickly the uptake happens.
Because I have a few strong ones that would probably benefit from being a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. No, get involved. Actually sign up really fast, because again, it's free. And I think that's also one of the constraints too for educators of trying to find quality resources and programming and support systems that you can afford, right? And so a lot of the teachers at the dollar store kind of do, the science at their dollar store. The Idea Park program for elementary teachers for early years to grade 3, suite of resources. Curiosity looks at the STSE component. It's for grades 8 to 12. Again, fuzzy level could be grade 7 if you get involved with that. And we work with STAO, we work with the Ministry of Education on our program development as well. And we do Tomato Steer now. So those of you who haven't been involved with Tomato Steer, it's actually going through a bit of a refresh with the teaching resources, but that's also free, and it's being used at thousands and thousands of schools across the country. So a long-winded sales pitch to what our ministry is doing, and we're here to support. Next up. Any questions or observations?
I know this more side you talked about that parental community support, and I know that like music is sort of like the bottom. And I'm a parent of kind of younger children, and I notice a lot of their kind of after-school programs and lessons and things like that. There are very few available in STEM areas. Is there any research on like kind of non-school programs in the back?
For the STEM programs at school? Yeah, there's definitely, so I want to first say that I'm not at all an advocate of picking subject areas and pitting them against each other. So when it comes to looking at languages and music and fitness and whatnot, I've used my own kid as a little bit of a poster child on how do you deal with music and arts and humanities and science and technology. So I think we have to address that issue, because I think we're not doing our kids any good by saying, you shouldn't necessarily be. It's more important to know how to problem solve than to be physically fit, right? That said, yes, there's been a huge rise in the number of opportunities available. When I started Let's Talk Science like 20 some odd years ago, there was really no outreach office at any university, and now I would say every single university across this country and many of the colleges offer summer camp programs that are science and engineering programs. I've seen a real rise in kind of small franchise operations as well that would be out-of-school clubs. Absolutely. And then there's obviously programs that we do, the birthday parties and whatnot. I've seen a big increase in the maker culture with opportunities to get kids involved in maker camps and after-school programs. I think one of the problems we have is we all use different words and we all use different language. So we could do a better job in trying to agree on what kind of words would actually allow parents and allow teachers to know that we're getting at inquiry, we're getting at the skill development, we're getting at STEM, because now the big fight is should it be STEM or STEAM, right? So we spend more of our time talking about the words rather than getting it out. So look for ICT, a lot more around data camps, there's a lot more about coding camps, a lot of emphasis on girls in like out of school or Saturday afternoon coding opportunities. So there's a huge rise in those opportunities.
Like at where I'm, like at the school where I am, the problem with the parents are, yeah, in the classroom we're bringing out the problem solving, the critical thinking, but then it might be unique to just certain schools. The parents are doing too much for the kids, where it's a barrier to us is what we're teaching them. Is there any resource out there that could be provided to parents on how to bring about the critical thinking in the home as well as in the classroom, because it's kind of like a barrier. If they're doing everything for the kids are losing some of their ability to problem solve for themselves.
I see Mars. You're writing that down, Mars. I see Mars stepped in from Lunchbox Science. That's a great idea. I haven't seen anything on it yet. I would say, from a parent perspective, Let's Talk Science is just starting to stick its toe in the water as to what we can do, so I'd really love some insight. We've been working with other partners like TV Ontario, so we've been the science partner for TVO for quite a lot of years in helping with programming and trying to reach families in that way. Now we're starting to figure out what is our job, and I really welcome input from educators on what could we do to help you with bringing the message to parents.
Because I find that is a huge issue at our school, like, is in trying to get the kids to do it themselves, but then they go home and it's already done, so they don't have the ability, or they'll come up with a problem and you're looking at, like, what could you do well?
So parents are building the bridges or doing
yes,
science
pretty much
projects.
It's being done. We do a lot, like I do a lot in the classroom because I know if it goes, the kids aren't developing the skills themselves.
Have others got that same experience? Have you seen resources for parents that you're sending home? So part of what we're trying to do with this campaign, and we're actually, I guess it will go live today, is our first attempt at a social media campaign. We are targeting parents with this kind of information. We've created a hub which is only seen if you actually see some of the social media ads. Within a couple of months, we'll actually make it public so everybody can actually see it. But our goal is to try to figure out how do you communicate with parents about this topic. What are the trigger points that will get them thinking about how should they support in a positive, productive way their kids learning, largely focused on teenagers right now, but obviously not exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be happy to share what we learn over the next couple of months. So we've been taking some of these data points and some of the key messages around how do you support your kids to make positive decisions, and we're trying it in all different ways. We've also have really realized that it's the moms that are the critical decision maker and the key, one of the key motivators. And the data, when we started to pull out how dads were influencing, I saw it's still really stereotypical, how dads were influencing versus how moms were influencing. Dads were more influential around pushing the STEM disciplines, regardless of the gender of their child. Moms were definitely more reluctant to it. So there's probably about a 20% spread on how moms and dads were having conversations. But ultimately, I think more moms have more conversations. So we've been trying to figure out, like, where are these mommy bloggers? So if you've even got ideas of who are influential parenting experts or parenting voices that we can start to get on side to be your advocates and your champions, I think then we could be on to something to help support you in the classroom better.
I have to say I'm surprised because it's not the experience I had. It's kind of the experience I had is kind of the contrary. There is a push for everybody to go to science and math, even if the kid doesn't want to and doesn't want to do it, and the parents go, no, he has to have at least the math or at least the science because it's going to look better or whatever. So I'm kind of surprised that the statistics don't show what I've seen. But yeah, I guess awareness is out there.
So part of it could be the demographic of the parent, and I am sensitive to time, but one of the pieces we did about 2 years ago with parents showed a big difference between new Canadians and like second generation Canadians and the push. So many more new Canadians are far more supportive of the STEM disciplines with their kids than, say, second or third generation Canadian parents are. That might explain, depending on the diversity of your school. Yeah.
Because we're doing the career STEM course, there's a software that they use. We were just discussing our table. Some of the choices for careers are STEM stuff. So I wonder if that's something we lobby for with the government. Like, I don't know if it's why the software that they use.
So within Curiosity, so that's our web-based program for grade 8 to 12, we've actually got a big section on careers, and that's what some of the federal support that we've recently received will help us to do more. So there is that there, and there's hundreds profiles and videos that cover all different kinds of STEM disciplines.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could connect with the career studies teachers. And maybe we're just joking, somebody is going to
It's a good point, for sure. Last question?
Okay, part of just research. Could part of the reason why the kids aren't maybe choosing so much into the sciences and all, because I know just from talking to nieces in university, is the focus on the marks. Like, oh, those are hard courses. That's going to bring down our overall average. So we need a high average to get into this university and stuff. Has any research been done on that kind of a thinking and how to kind of steer away from just looking at the marks?
Yeah. Marks are definitely a key player. I will say that I'm on a board of governors for one of the universities, and one of the most recent conversations we've had is that marks for entrance are starting to go down rather than going up. So that's a bit of an epiphany. So at the post-secondary level, we're seeing a pull of the customer, right, so the student towards colleges from universities. We also are seeing parents realizing that colleges is important too, and that two pathways are likely going to be, I think about 30% of parents in our poll said that their kids will likely need two of them. So I think that we're going to start to see a bit of a change in distribution. We're also going through a demographic bubble where that actually teen demographic is going down, like the number of kids there. So you're going to begin to start to see more panic at the post-secondary level because they get their money by having more people in the system, right? So we are going to start to see something very interesting happen over the next few years, is that the mark fight changes. The need to demonstrate the acquisition of skills will change. So you as an educator at elementary, post-secondary, secondary will have to show that you're developing the skills. I think we're really in a very interesting point in the history of education right now. Just like 125 years ago when STEO got started. And I want to thank you for all the work that you do every day with your kids. You have a pivotal job and an incredibly important role. So we're here to help. Come visit our exhibit booth. Stay in chat with me. Thank you.
Just a quick word. We need these kind of presentations beyond the hands-on stuff. Bigger picture, perhaps. Our association have done a lot in that connection. We have just one other quick point. STEO no longer gives mugs and coffee things and all this to our speakers. We make a generous donation to Sick Kids Hospital every year in lieu of the mugs, if you will. So you're not going to get a mug, but a little card saying thank you for supporting their organization. Thanks very much.
So that was our first live Google Hangout on air from STEO 2015. Thanks for joining us. It will be recorded and stored on our YouTube channel for the rest of the time, so long as you do this. So you can always go back and revisit some of the points that Bonnie made. But thanks for visiting us at the Science Teachers Association of Ontario conference, and we'll see you at the next few Hangouts. Bye.